And now we come down to this fucking stupid shit. Paul, let's face it. You're a dangerous guy. I'm a dangerous guy. You have kids. I have kids. My question is this fucking thing going to get stupid? Because there's telltale signs coming to me that this is going to get stupid.
This doesn't happen all the time, George. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime fucking thing. If this is what you want to do, if this is the way you want to live your life, you understand what I'm saying? If this is what you want to do, this is a once-in-a-lifetime fucking way to get it. Because it doesn't fucking happen.
It's the night of February 25th, 2003 in Berwin, Illinois. Mark Polchan, a local jeweler and a member of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, drives up to the CNS coin-operated amusements office, a storefront on West 16th Street that leased video poker machines to local businesses. Sitting by him in the car was Samuel Volpendesto, the son of a mobster and a former World War II hero who joined the Chicago Mafia upon his return from the war and had become a strip club owner by the 90s. Volpendesto was vicious, being overheard on a wiretap, laughing about watching a man be thrown through an industrial meat grinder. The two had been sent there that night by Mike Sarno, the captain of the Mafia's crew in Cicero, a suburb of Chicago. The pair got out of the car, planted a pipe bomb outside the store, and fled. The bomb went off, mangling the interior, damaging the exterior, and hitting neighboring businesses. It was just another violent incident in an uptick of criminal activity around the area as a result of Sarno's alliance with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club to run a gambling and robbery ring around Chicago. Sarno had taken the gang in Cicero from Mafia captain Rocco Infelice in the late 90s. After he was released from prison in 1999, he'd served 6 years, being charged in 1993 alongside Infelice for racketeering in Cicero, and now he was a street boss, an aging Mafia leader who operated his crew like a street gang and was involved in getting quick cash through armed robberies, gambling, and bombings. Sarno's crime spree had started since his release in 1999, and he'd built together a crew that included Polchan, who ran a pawn shop where Sarno's crew sold stolen items, Casey Saflarski, who ran Sarno's video poker business, local officers James Formato and Dino Vitalo, and thieves Mark Hay and Anthony Volpendesto, Volpendesto's son. Polchan would use his store to hold meetings, house poker machines for later distribution, and to sell off stolen goods, with money being shared between Sarno and the Outlaws. Formato, a cop, moved stolen money between interstate lines, surveilled robbery targets, and covered for Sarno. Vitalo filed false police reports and cleaned out wiretaps at any of Sarno's locations to cover for him.
Poor guy was at the wrong place at the wrong time. We were hoping that he was going to be alone.
Good evening, I'm Bill Weir. Well, despite what The Godfather taught us, most self-respecting mobsters hope all their sons find a legitimate line of work.
Operation Family Secrets was an undercover operation into the Chicago Mafia that was kicked off in the early 2000s and came to a conclusion in 2007. The entire thing was started by Kurt Calabrese, a gangster who'd flipped on his dad and began wearing a wire against him while meeting him in prison. The trial saw the imprisonment of some of Chicago's largest mafia figures, being charged with crimes committed since the 1970s, all the way in Las Vegas and beyond. Police made a profile of the organization at this time, noting the men who managed to avoid jail time like Sarno, John DeFronzo, and Marco D'Amico, and Sarno was named as one of Chicago's lead criminal bosses. In the summer of 2008, FBI agents raided Sarno's home, looking for evidence that he'd been involved in the 2003 pipe bombing against CNS vending. As a part of their investigation, they'd wiretapped locations his crew operated out of, catching Volpendesto talking about Sarno directly on tape. Although they didn't find any evidence linking him directly to the bombing, they did find lots of cash stored in his home. A year later, in May of 2009, Sarno was indicted, rounded up with Volpendesto, Polchan, and the rest of the crew for running gambling games in Chicago, controlling an interstate robbery ring, and for the 2003 bombing. Police totaled their haul over the years at $1.8 million and charged them further with grand theft auto and arson. In December of 2010, Sarno was convicted, his bond was revoked, and he awaited his final sentencing. On February 8, 2012, Sarno walked into court to hear his charges, 25 years for racketeering. Part of the justification for his heavy sentencing was that, according to U.S. Attorney Amarjit Bachu, Sarno was never going to change his ways as a criminal and had no chance for rehabilitation. With Sarno behind bars and most of the Chicago Outfit's top administration rotting away behind life sentences, the streets were emptier than they'd ever been among the ranks of the mafia, and it was this period that allowed for Paul Carparelli to rise up in the gang and make a name and a crew for himself. In 1972, a new gang hit the scene in Cicero. A group of young men had begun to congregate on Roosevelt Road, meeting at the Big Top restaurant every day as their main hangout. The gang almost instantly made rivals with other local gangs. By absorbing smaller gangs in different towns, they were able to grow their territory. They became known as the 12th Street Players, members of the People's Nation. On December 14, 1995, members of the Almighty Popes, a set formed on 62nd Street and allied with the People's Nation, opened fire at a group of Ridgeway Lords, a rival gang who were hanging out with 3 girls, murdering 13-year-olds Carrie Hovel and Helena Martin as they sat in the van of a Ridgeway Lord. Police, following the double homicide, cracked down on any gang associated with the People's Nation. The insane Popes and the 12th Street Players were busted up. One of the gunmen in the shooting ended up passing on false testimonies to the court that indicted Matthew Sopron and Wayne Antusas, top-level leaders in the Almighty Popes, who ended up getting life sentences, which were overturned 2 decades later. However, by 1998, the gangland scene in Cicero was barren, but the 12th Street Players ended up re-emerging by the 2000s and fighting to take back their territory. One of the members of this gang was Paul Carparelli. Born in the early 70s in Cicero, Carparelli ended up rolling with 12th Street by the 1980s, and across the 90s, he racked up a heavy rap sheet. He was involved in bar fights, beatdowns, and numerous altercations that almost ended in him shooting his opponent. He began a job as a firefighter in the 90s, working in the Bloomingdale Fire Department for $28 grand a year, a pay he looked down on for the amount of work required as a firefighter. He hated his job, later telling a friend that being a firefighter required wanting to help people, and that he hated everyone, and oftentimes argued with people who'd call him. In one case, an elderly woman called at 2 a.m. for chest pains that she told Carparelli she'd been experiencing since 7 p.m., leading to Carparelli bluntly asking her why she hadn't called at 7. In 1995, Carparelli was arrested at a Chicago Blackhawks game after socking a man in the face during a conversation, and upon getting out, he returned to his criminal roots and began working on the street again. Being in the 12th Street Players afforded him connections to the Chicago Mafia's crew in Cicero, a street gang that operated in drugs and extortion. Carparelli, holding a popular status in 12th Street, began selling coke for the mob and got paid as a low-level extortionist, being sent out by higher-level bosses to collect gambling debts. Carparelli had the opportunity to rise up within the Cicero gangland scene after Sarno's arrest. In 2010, he came into contact with George Brown. Brown was a former strongman, standing at 6'6", 300 pounds. In the 90s, he was very well built, but years of blue-collar union work had their toll on his body, and at some point in late 2009, Brown suffered a work-related shoulder injury that left the single father of 2 unemployed, broke, and addicted to painkillers. A former martial arts expert, Brown's injury prevented him from raising his arms too high, but he could still kick, and kick hard for his size. Also joining the crew was Vito Iozzo, a 38-year-old plumbing contractor and father, Robert McManus and Patrick White, men from suburban Chicago who, like Iozzo and Brown, were tall and physically intimidating individuals who could be used as enforcers. The men soon came together under Carparelli to form an extortionists-for-hire debt collection crew, and they were about to get their first job from Mark Dubin, a printing company owner. Zubin was the vice president of the American Litho Company, a marketing agency in Carroll Stream, but in 2009, the company began facing financial issues as their sales were dropping, and their clients weren't paying. Some of the clients owed the company a few $100,000, but they weren't willing to pay up the bill. Zubin approached Frank Orlando, an ink supplier for American Litho who had ties to the Chicago Outfit. Orlando, then in his mid-40s, took Zubin's debt issues and brought them to Carparelli, connecting the pair. Carparelli's crew agreed to help Zubin get his money back. Zubin's first job involved a debtor in Las Vegas, and he paid for Carparelli and Brown to fly down to Sin City, but the job was unsuccessful and they returned to Chicago empty-handed. The next job involved a debtor in Wisconsin. In October of 2010, Zubin flew himself, Brown, and Yotzo by private jet to the metropolitan of Appleton, Wisconsin, to meet a debtor, a businessman who owed over $170,000 to American Litho. They agreed to hold the meeting at Fuddruckers, a burger place near the Appleton airport. Zubin and the businessman sat down in a back room when the debtor offered to give up his Mustang Shelby as collateral for the debt. When Brown and Yotzo suddenly walked in and sat down in the meeting, the debtor began shaking, afraid that the two tall, heavy-set men would harm him to the point that he began peeing himself and shaking so badly he couldn't write clearly. The two made it very clear they'd never forget what he owed Zubin, and Yotzo asked him for where the pickup address for the car would be. However, the businessman was shaking so bad he couldn't even speak straight, so Yotzo demanded his wallet, grabbed his license, and wrote down his address, telling him they knew where he lived and that they'd get the car from his home. Zubin finished the meeting by telling the debtor he wasn't going to return with Brown and Yotzo out of fear of seeing what they would do to him if he didn't pay up. Their next job came in 2011. Navneet Chawla was a businessman employed by mafia associate Luigi Sardone at Sardone's Granite Company, but he owed Sardone a debt and in turn needed to collect on $500,000 from a businessman so he could pay off his boss. Sardone got into contact with Carparelli's crew, who agreed to take the job. On July 14, 2011, Chawla sent Yotzo, Brown, and White to the company of his debtor. They marched into the office and demanded he pay up $500,000. The debtor then, shockingly, fell into such a panic that he actually fainted and slid out of his chair, but the men picked him up, threw water on his face to wake him up, and Yotzo stood guard by the door while the other two beat him viciously. The beating left the businessman with a permanent loose tooth and constant headaches. For their next job, Zubin sent Brown and Carparelli to New Jersey to track down the businessman from Vegas, as they believed he was there. While there, they managed to find an employee of another company that owed Zubin $146,000. He told Brown and Carparelli that the entire debt matter was being decided on in court, but Brown told him that if you fuck him, then call him up and tell him you fuck him before they left. By this point, however, things weren't going that well for Carparelli. He was still selling off coke, but his debt collection ring wasn't performing. Tensions began rising between him and Brown, who was still a drug addict, and the two began to get into a falling out. Both were dangerous men, both used violence as a means to an end, and both had children, with Brown having 2 kids, and Carparelli being the single father to his teenage son with Tourette's. With Brown's addiction getting worse, and no way out of the mob life, the police began to close in on him, sensing he could be their ticket into the crew. In early 2013, an undercover FBI agent acted as a New Jersey state cop and called up Brown, using his ruse as a cop and asking about Brown's travels to New Jersey in 2011, why he was there, and even giving specific details about the car he'd rented. Brown, Carparelli, and the rest of the crew fell into a panic, as they began calling and meeting often, trying to figure out who would have told the state police all the info, sensing a rat in their crew without knowing the FBI was right on their trail. When the FBI eventually approached Brown that year, he decided to flip. He began wearing a wire, recording all of his meetings with Carparelli. These meetings uncovered a lot regarding their relationship, with numerous wiretaps between them, catching Carparelli complaining about how their crew wasn't making any progress, getting the job done, and that they were wasting a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rise up and get real positions in the underworld, following Sarno's 2012 conviction.
I mean, and then I hear you go behind my back and ask Tony for fucking work. I mean, that's wrong, George. You have Tony for work.
Hold on. I didn't go behind your back and ask him if I didn't go behind your back to ask if there was work. I went over there and I said, "Is Paulie taking care of this stuff?" I said, "If Paulie's taking care of it, then I don't want anything to do with it." I said, "If he's not, this is verbatim the conversation that was spoken. If Paulie's taking care of this, I don't want anything to do with it. That's his. I said, if he's not doing something, I'm hurting for money, and that's it."
I mean, that's not the story I heard. I heard that you called him up, wanted to meet with him. A couple different times you blew him off. Finally you met with him and you asked for work, and he told you that Paulie's taking care of it. You have to go through him. You have to ask him. That's what I heard.
All that is not what fucking happened.
Oh, I'm telling you, that's what I heard.
Well, that's maybe what you heard, but that's not what I said.
And here's the fucking thing. I gave you that list. You know, there's people on that fucking list that we might have a problem with, so I have to tell my friends about it. So I tell my friends about it. Yeah, go ahead, do it. They're waiting to hear something, nothing happens. That's the shit I'm talking about. That's why they're fucking dead. So what? I'm not going to fucking hear it. And if I'm going to hear it, you're going to hear it. Then you got to go crack heads with your fucking guys. That's how it goes. Shit rolls downhill, George. You know that.
I know it's his fault.
Well, I mean, and like I said, if you don't want to live this lifestyle, that's not a problem. God bless you. Do what you got to do. And me, at this point, I kind of have no other choice. I committed myself to something. I'm not a guy that backs out. That's not me. I'm not built like that.
The professional relationship was souring between the two gangsters, which was helping the FBI's case. Brown, who saw Carparelli as an idiot, knew by this point a lot of Chicago's top criminals, at least by name, including Salvatore De Laurentiis, an elderly gangster who he named a major figure in the Cicero gang, and Pete DeFronzo, who he named as Chicago's organized crime boss, essentially the gangster who controlled all street crime in the city. He also named John DeFronzo as the official administrative boss of the Mafia.
A train whistle signals the approach of noon here in west suburban River Grove. Also like clockwork on this Friday is the arrival of John DeFronzo to the Loon Cafe. The 80-year-old convicted mob boss has driven his shiny new pickup truck a few blocks from the Grand Avenue home where he's lived for years. He is the first one here for lunch with no-nos.
And now we come down to this fucking stupid shit, Paul. Let's face it. You're a dangerous guy. I'm a dangerous guy. You have kids. I have kids. My question is this fucking thing going to get stupid? Because there's telltale signs coming to me that this is going to get stupid. This is not what I want at all.
Not what I want either.
You have kids. I got kids. We don't need this.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah, but here's the thing, George. Here's the thing. This is what you don't understand. I got people breathing down my neck. You understand what I'm saying? If me and you, Johnny, agree to do something, okay, it's other people are involved, and you know which other people I'm talking about, okay? When we started putting this thing together, you said you wanted to start working. I says, no problem. I went to these guys and told them what we were doing. Party was just the icing on the fucking cake. I expect you there. You didn't come. Okay, whatever. That was just a fucking, that's stupid shit. That's bust shit. That's between me. I like the bust balls. You like the bust balls. Who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? Let me tell you something. That fucking guy that's sitting in that fucking joint over there, that guy means both to me. He's fucking, I love that kid as much as I love Anthony, as much as I love you. But can I tell you something, George? Me and him really, legitimately had pistols to each other's heads. Okay? And that's the truth. You can believe me or not. It's a true fucking story. But he's still my friend. okay? I can see you punch you in the face, you can punch me in the face. You're still my friend. As long as you don't steal from me, fuck my wife, or rat on me, you're my friend 1,000%. You hear that? You hear that very fucking things that I just told you?
Yes, I do.
Other recordings caught between Brown and Carparelli captured fears of violence between both men. A lot of the recordings also caught them continuing to conduct their business. In one call, Brown talked openly about one of his friends who took a crew to collect a debt from a local debtor, explaining how they beat and kicked him on the ground violently, while Carparelli laughed at the thought of it.
Wow.
I got him.
They walked up there. He got in the head with something.
Good.
So hold on a second. My one friend walked up to him this way, from the front.
Right.
The other guy walked up from back. No.
He just started wailing on him. He didn't, no words, no nothing.
No, hit him right in the back of the head.
Well, was he a big prick?
He's huge. They said huge.
I told you.
Well, I'll tell you what he did do. Down on the ground.
He pulled a Timmy.
He pulled a Timmy.
They give him footwork?
He's all fucked up. They're guaranteeing me that they broke his arm.
All right, good. That's what they give
Because he tried to do this.
Yeah.
And
What'd they hit him with? A pole or something?
I'm thinking a pipe.
Yeah. But they got out of there. Everything was okay, right?
No, she got kicked in the face 4 or 5 times, kicked in the face. But they said they really did a number on his ribs. But they're guaranteeing me that something broke because they said when he...
Good.
In a February call, Carparelli ordered Brown to collect the $66,000 debt at the home of a debtor, telling him to walk up to the home, ring the bell, and knock the guy in the head before asking for the money. They also formed a plan to collect $90,000 from a construction contractor who owed the money to electrician company owner Elio DeSantis. DeSantis, who'd met Carparelli at his Bloomingdale pizza place, knew about Carparelli's reputation and got into contact with Brown. He revealed he'd at first considered just taking the debtor to court, but thought that going through gangsters was faster. Carparelli and Brown then went to the man's home, threatened him, and soon enough, he was paying off his debt to DeSantis. However, things began to come to a close in the summer of 2013 when a $300,000 debt was passed down a chain of command in the Mafia and ended up in Carparelli's lap. The entire thing started with Michael Davis, a friend of the Mafia nicknamed Mickey. Davis was a millionaire businessman who owned the E.F. Hale landfill in Plainfield, Illinois. Growing up in a rough neighborhood as a poor kid, Davis had built a solid business for himself by his mid-50s, getting debris collection jobs from Peter DeFranzo and his brother, John. He was close to the Mafia, being childhood friends with the DeFranzos and being close to Salvatore De Laurentiis, oftentimes traveling together to Costa Rica. In 2012, Davis agreed to invest in a Melrose Park used car dealership with R.J. Serpico, the nephew of Melrose Park Mayor Ronald M. Serpico. The loan was given to RJ and his father, a gambling addict, which was unknown at the time to Davis and to the younger Serpico. The agreement was a $300,000 loan that would be paid back in full in 2015, while $300 per sold vehicle and a percent of the dealership's profits would be paid to Davis as a part of his share of the dealership. Between June of 2012, when the dealership opened, and January of 2013, Serpico lost money. He wasn't a great car salesman and wasn't selling too many vehicles, which would have been bad enough on its own if not for his father's addiction. They stopped getting Davis his share, and so, in January of 2013, he decided to pay a visit. Davis walked into Serpico's office that day, closed the door, and sat down. He revealed a sheet with Serpico's dad's gambling debts on it, threw it down on the table, and told Serpico this wasn't the fucking agreement. I want my fucking money. He then asked Serpico, as a threat, how are your wife and kids doing? Are you still living in Park Ridge? Does your wife still own that salon in Schaumburg? He then got up, leaned over the table, and glared at the silent Serpico before promptly leaving. For the next few weeks, Davis convinced Serpico to fire his addict father, and oftentimes saw Davis with Peter DeFranzo driving around the dealership and looking at it closely. Serpico agreed to sign over a $30,000 Chevy Chevelle to Davis, as well as paying him some $31,000 in cash. However, it wasn't enough, and so in May, Serpico agreed to sign over Ideal Motors to Davis, who now owned the business, put a friend in charge of it, and had the vehicles on the lot towed to a lot owned by DeFranzo, but it still wasn't enough. Davis wanted Serpico to suffer for mismanaging his $300,000 and wanted both of his legs broken. Leg breakings, often used as a fear tactic, is a long and complicated process that involves constant beating for several minutes until the leg bones fracture, and Davis was ready to pay $10,000 to issue the attack. He managed to organize the hit with Carparelli, who in turn passed the job down to his crew. Carparelli, who'd never met Davis until he asked for his help, organized a meeting where Davis gave him the details of the job. He then passed the details to Brown in a wiretapped conversation, telling him that Davis was De Laurentiis' friend and that he was a big guy and they couldn't screw up the job. And now, the feds had to pull him out. Davis organized the transfer of cash through restaurant owner Filippo Rovito, known as Gigi, another civilian businessman who was a friend of the mafia. Rovito owned the Capri Ristorante, an upscale eatery in Burr Ridge. He passed the job down to his brother John, who in turn got the job to Carparelli, who then passed it to Brown. On July 11, 2013, agents surveilling Davis tracked his cell data and caught him leaving the Itasca Country Club, where he played golf with DeFranzo, and driving to Riviero's restaurant. There, he passed the $5,000 down payment for the job to be picked up by Brown, who'd get the remaining $5,000 after it was done. Brown went and picked up the envelope of cash, financial evidence of Davis's role in the beating, and that's when the feds decided to act. On July 25th, 2013, the FBI acted fast, moving through Chicago's suburbs and arresting Carparelli, Yozzo, Brown, and the businessmen who'd employed them, charging them with extortion and attempted beatings, and keeping Brown's witness agreement sealed and hidden for his safety. Police caught Carparelli on his driveway with his son in the car, cuffing him and raiding his home. There they found $170,000 in cash, 2 handguns, $200,000 in jewelry hidden in a crawl space, and enough cocaine to run a small distribution operation. Following the arrests, Yozzo decided to flip to the state, while Rovito flipped in the Davis case and implicated his brother Gigi. Carparelli posted his bail and got out. Soon after, driving to a local Walmart one of the witnesses in the case managed, he found an employee outside, drove up, and told the employee to tell his boss that he was a rat, and that he knew what happened to rats. Police then revoked Carparelli's bail and sent him back to prison. While behind bars, he also got to threatening another business partner who he co-owned a deli with but wasn't returning his calls anymore. The two had been in the process of closing the eatery and settling the finances, but after the partner cut off their correspondence, Carparelli sent an email on August 1st, calling him an informant and joking that he was hanging out with George Brown and Johnny Rovito. He then sent another email 10 days later. At the end of 2014, Zubin was convicted, getting 1 year of probation and stepping down from his role at American Litho, while DeSantis got 1 year in prison. On March 24, 2015, Yozzo received 38 months behind bars, following by hiding in witness protection. In 2022, he was arrested for shoplifting. On April 7, Orlando got 46 months, while McManus got 5 years, and Chawla was sentenced to 3 years probation, 4 months in a community correctional facility, and a fine. The evidence against Carparelli by Brown's wiretaps was overwhelming, and he pleaded guilty in May to await sentencing. On November 27, 2015, Davis received 4 years behind bars, but because his and Filippo's statements in court contradicted with statements made by John Rivero, Filippo avoided any jail time in the Serpico beating. On February 3, 2016, Carparelli got 3.5 years. The prosecution had tried throwing him 11 years, but the defense argued a good case on his behalf as a former firefighter who'd made poor life decisions and had anger issues, and that he was taking care of a son with Tourette's and couldn't be away for that long. He'd been arrested in 2006 for domestic battery against his wife, leaving him as a single father. On April 8, 2016, Brown got 2 years in prison as a result of his cooperation. Brown eventually got out of prison after serving his 2 years and returned to his home in Villa Park, a suburb of Chicago, despite the fear that the mafia would have a target on his back. On May 26, 2020, after just 2 years a free man, Brown passed away at his home in Villa Park from undisclosed causes. On May 31st, 2020, a 24-year-old member of the 12th Street gang, Bobby English Jr., was gunned down in the driver's seat of his car in West Chicago. His uncle Billy and father Bobby Sr. were both big members of the gang back in their time, but later became informants against them. The reason for English Jr.'s shooting are unknown, but they revolve around either him being an informant like his family members, stealing from 12th Street stash houses, or a failed real estate deal between him and a Cicero Mafia member. Carparelli remains a suspect in ordering the shooting, although not officially, and he hasn't been arrested nor questioned by local police for it.